Welcome. So this is Beginner's Guide to Roses. We're going to start very, very simple and lead you through the stages of lessons getting much, much harder. But flower arranging is never hard, so don't worry about it. When you get your roses, unless you're lucky enough to be able to pick them from your garden, they're going to come like this. They're called a deck. And it is 10. Now something really interesting about that. Remember we used to talk about I'll buy her a dozen roses? These days they don't come from the growers in dozens, they come in 10s, but the price stayed the same. Wasn't that a clever way of getting sort of more money for less roses? So there it is, it's a deck of roses and they come like that, always all exactly the same, and you buy them in different stem lengths. You can get long stemmed ones, which are much, much longer. Ouch, it just pricked me. Or you can get shorter stemmed ones. Obviously, the shorter the stem, the cheaper they are. So when you're planning your design, know if you're going to, the first thing you're going to do is chop off these stems, in which case it's a huge waste of money to buy long stem roses. So to get them out, they will come, they won't be in water, they will be from the grower, if you can buy direct from the grower, in a brown box or flat, and very, very thirsty. If you get them from a wholesaler, possibly they've been in water. The first thing you do is going to take the sleeve off. Don't be tempted to pull it from the top. Get yourself a pair of scissors and cut the sleeve off. This will stop damaging the tops of the roses or any of the flowers we're going to use, and of course also stops you getting pricked. So then you've got your roses here, always got foliage on, and normally rubber bands at the bottom. Don't attempt to save the rubber bands, you're just going to get pricked, so just ping them all off. There are your roses. Long stemmed, delicious rose, very, very prickly. You can get rose strippers, and rose strippers will take all of the thorns off for you. Look at them. Vicious, vicious thorns. And a rose stripper will just go zoom straight down and get rid of them. Or you can use your nail just to ping them off like that, and they will come off. But that's very, very time consuming. But you will never ever want to give roses to anybody with those thorns on. So either do it by hand or do it with a rose stripper. Very quickly you can also just run a knife down them. You will have already decided, because you've planned your design first, if you want the foliage on, and for this one we don't. So the foliage for me comes off at the same time. This beautiful long stemmed rose. Now these roses will be gasping for water, absolutely gasping. So cut the stem on an angle. Why an angle? If you think about it, if I cut it there, there's so much water can go up. But if I cut it on an angle, there is more surface area, which means more water can go into it. So now it can suck up water all the way along there and put it in a bucket of water. The water can also have flower food in it, and often these roses will be left for 24 hours overnight in a very, very cool place. You mightn't have a cooler like we haven't got a cooler. I've discovered my lobby is the coolest place in our house. For you it could be your bathroom, believe it or not, perhaps because it hasn't got as many windows. But find a very cool spot for them and leave them for 24 hours in water to soak up as much water as they can. But I have done that with these so we can carry on. But that is just how to what's called condition your roses when you first get them. Can you see they are very tiny, these roses? Over the course of the next 2 days it will open to about this size. So don't think that that rose is as big as it's going to get. It will open out. Right, so I'll clear the decks, finish doing these, taking off their thorns, and then we're ready for your first design. Back in a mo. So there are all the roses done. They actually look quite pretty just sitting there, don't they? Ready to go. Bucket really doesn't do anything for me. beautiful, beautiful roses, all soaking, and they have soaked for that 24 hours in the cool to get lots and lots of water up those stems. Now, so we're starting very, very simple. This first design, really couldn't call it a design. That's far too grand a word for what you're going to do, but it's an emergency design. Somebody's coming around, or somebody's just given you something, or somebody's just gone to hospital and you're going, oh, I need to take something. What you should have always on hand are these handy square type vases. Very, very cheap. $2 or $3 in New Zealand, believe it or not, at a floristry wholesalers, and they come in several sizes, the very small size and the much, much bigger one. This is ideal if you're just taking something to somebody in a hospital, just to say thank you, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to use this one later on, but I promised you at the beginning of this DVD that I was going to use the same container throughout. I'll just say I'm going to use the same container, but it might be a little bit bigger because I want to give you the grand statement, and I did say I was going to use 10 roses, all right? You can use in there probably 4, 5. There you can, I'll make for a little present. This one, a little bit bigger, will take the 10 roses. This is material that came from a fabric shop. It's a netting, and I think they use it for making ballerinas tutus. It's that sort of stiff material, and if you've got a fabric shop, have a wander and see what colours you can get. There comes in all sort of colours, but what's wonderful about it is it's when you scrunch it like this, it suddenly turns into the most exotic little thing, doesn't it? So I'm going to just put roses in it. To start off, I'm going to grab the roses, and I'm going to go for the short-stemmed ones because I don't need to have them very tall. I want them so that they will go just above the container, which means I'm possibly going to cut them there. Always cut on an angle, and that's my first one done. I've also left the foliage on because red and green are complementary colours, which means the green makes the red look more beautiful and the red makes the green look more beautiful, and it's lovely and lush. Right here at the moment it's hot summer, so a design like this right now would be very, very cooling. So I'm going to prepare only 6 of those, so you're going to have 4 for another design. 6 short stems. Tried to place these in the bucket so that they wouldn't all damage each other. I'm going to make some slightly shorter into the bucket with the scraps, but don't throw that bucket out because you might be wanting to use those scraps, and some a little bit longer. 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm actually, as I'm doing this, I'm measuring them off that original one that I measured from the container. So with this netting, just scrunch it up. Scrunch it up in this lovely informal style like that, and pop it straight in to your container. Now this is just sort of giving you an explosion. There it is, just giving you an explosion of netting fluff. Alright? Fill it up. Don't fill it up unless it's staying where you're making it. Put about an inch and a half, a couple of centimetres of water in the bottom, so when you travel those roses are going to still have plenty of water in them. Now you take the rose, clear off these bottom branches because you won't be able to get them through, but leave the top ones on because those ones are going to give you a bit of greenery, and just pop it in so that the netting holds it up. Alright, you're going to do this. Clear off the bases. You're going to do this, and the netting becomes your mechanic for holding the roses in place. Very informal. This is why it's wonderful for a loving grandchild to do for a nana or for a special birthday or something like that. It's got a great presence. And the netting is just holding it all up. Isn't it easy? Just so easy. See a wee gap there? So putting my fingers right down so that they can go right through and into there. Of course it's going to move around. It really doesn't matter in this sort of a design. And there's a gap there, so we'll put one in there. And there it is. 6 roses, 1 vase, a little bit of netting for a beginner. Impressive. And you say, get well soon, I love you. There you are. Okay. There's a story to this next design that you might find useful for a circumstance that you come across. I was at the Philadelphia Flower Show in Pennsylvania and was staying with a friend of a friend. Therefore, I felt a little special thank you after that first day was in order. So at the show, I picked up a deck, 10 roses, brought them home. She wasn't home, and I thought, I've got to do a design for this lady. Nothing. She wasn't a flower arranger at all. There wasn't a vase in the house. There was nothing I could use. So in the end, I looked in her saucepan cupboard and found a casserole. And that's where this evolved. What can you do in the middle of winter in Philadelphia when it's a blizzard outside, no foliage available, but you want to say thank you to your hostess? Something you can do. Well, the first thing I do, imagine this was the casserole dish, but as I promised, I'm going to use the same container throughout, and I put water in it to about that depth on it. These are the long stemmed roses. Now I'm measuring across this way, because I'm going to build a grid that goes across. So I'm cutting the stem there. Alright. I had a look in this lady's cupboard and I found the ties that bread used to have around it. They don't have it in New Zealand anymore. They might still in America. When your bread comes in a plastic bag, there's a little wire tie. So I was able to use that. Don't have those here, so I'm not going to use them. So there we are. So I'm cutting them now all to this length. Across this way. If you know noughts and crosses, I think in some parts of the world they call it tic-tac-toe. You'll see I'm actually building a noughts and crosses grid. Then we're going this way. This is why you never throw out the stems and leaves of flowers, because you can always use them for something creative. Now that's going to give me enough holes. Let me have a wee count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and I've only got 10 roses. So we're going to leave some gaps. One of the very basic things about flower arranging is space is just as important as no space. So by having a space, it gives a bit of relief on there. Now, when I did this in Pennsylvania, I then used her bread ties to just tie these all in place. I haven't got these here, unfortunately. I'm in Floral Design headquarters, so I have got a product called Oasis Fix. It is a product that looks very much like plasticine. You can use plasticine. If you're in your own home, you can use hot glue on this, or you could use double-sided sellotape. With this Oasis Fix, it has to be warm, so if you're doing this in the middle of winter, put it in your pocket for a little while, and you just pop it on there and then press that into it. You can see I've used far too big a piece, so it's obvious and ugly. So make sure it's only a tiny piece, because when you press it down, it will expand. There it is. So take it off. It stops working if it's got too much human oil on it, which it might possibly just have now, but there it is. And push it down and push it down this side. But as I said, if you're doing this in somebody else's home and you don't have any of this or plasticine or something like that in your pocket, have a search through and see if they've got a bread tie I mean, not everybody carries a hot glue gun around with them, do you? I've got to tell you, her face when she saw this was a picture. She just couldn't believe I'd made it with her casserole dish, and she thought I was so clever, and I thought all I did was, make 6 cuts on some roses and put some water in a thing, but it's lovely and modern. And of course, the longer you have these stems out each side, the more modern it looks. You don't even have them even. You can see, if I turn this up, you can see I've actually put the 3 sticks slightly to that end. If you have them absolutely symmetrical, they don't look quite as jaunty. I don't know if jaunty is a design word, really. Got a wee bend in that rose there. I'm probably being a wee bit mean on the fix. Plasticine, Blue Tack, they're all brand name. They all work just as well. Hot glue, cold glue. The reason I don't think I would use glue on someone else's casserole dishes, they mightn't appreciate it when they go to cook their next meal. And in we go. Now, if this particular product gets wet, it won't work. So I have thoroughly dried this rim. It's also a very good container because it's got a rim on it. Some of those aren't sticking. Doesn't really matter as long as most of them are. And I think I'm being a bit mean here with the fix. Okay, now I'll just show you that. Can you see how I've done it? So it's not even. You might prefer it even, but from a design point of view, it's rather nice on a hot summer's day to see a bit of water underneath there. And now it's a simple job of saying, I don't want the roses sticking way up here. I want them level. This is very European. So once again, I'm going to measure my container there to about there, which is about there. At this point, you must cut off any leaves that you think are going to go into the water. The reason is once leaves are in water, they go really, really horrible very, very quickly. Cut a stem on an angle, and in it goes. And there's your first one done. Even one looks gorgeous, doesn't it? Perhaps this could be arrangement with when you've only got one rose, but you need a few stems. You don't have to even use rose stems. If you've got roses in your own garden growing and they are much, much shorter, or you've only got one rose but it's a big one, make the grid from something else. Something else that's in your garden that's got lots and lots of beautiful stems on it. And of course these are being held up. It's a bit long. These, of course, are being now held up by the grid. Remember, they will get bigger. Measure, measure. And down it goes. Even 3. Doesn't 3 look good? Yeah. And remember, this is the reason that I ordered those long stems, because I wanted to have the stem as that grid. If you've only got short stem roses, use anything really for those side pieces there. That's 4. Keeping them actually the same height, because that's a very European way of doing things. This is also fabulous for wedding centerpieces. Quick to do, economic. And as I said, you could perhaps only have 1 or 2 roses in each one, which would be very, very cool. Keep them nice and straight. Remembering these roses are going to get bigger. Don't like that one there. See, I'm an asymmetrical person. If you've been watching these DVDs for a while, you'll know that I'm a totally asymmetrical person. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Isn't it amazing how much shorter you have to do them than you think you do when you're trying to get them so they're all level like that. Okay, so there's your variations. You can do it with 1, which looks gorgeous. You can do it with 2, which look gorgeous, 3, and there I've done it with 9. I'm not going to use the 10th one. That one is still too long. I'm not going to use the 10th one because for people who like symmetry, That is perfect. You've got your stalks sticking out the sides here, and you've got a lovely modern design that any hostess would be so, so pleased to get. And it's a one deck of roses, and whatever you can find in their house, in their kitchen, that they use for cooking that you can adapt into a vase. Roses love water. They prefer water to florifoam, so both these two simple designs will make your roses last for ages. There it is, number 2, done, quick and easy. Rose posies. Now they have been the flower, the posy, the design of choice for brides all around the world for the last 5 years. It shows that perhaps by saying it I'm pretty sick of them. But it's also a very useful skill for you to have, because once you know how to make them, then you can start to endorse them, play with them, add bling to them, do sorts of things. Now once again, here's my 10 roses. I've cut them fairly short, but just to show you the method of how to do a very, very simple rose bouquet with 10 roses. So start with the one in the middle. We then put the next one on an angle to it and hold on to it. See, there's that angle there? Sort of like you're tucking it underneath that first one. You take the next one and you tuck it underneath that one. And if I held that, tied that, it probably would stand up. So there's your 3. Now as I'm moving now with my 4th one, I'm tucking it underneath the one before it and moving around. I'm taking the 5th one, tucking it underneath and moving around. Underneath and move around. I think you're getting the picture. Alright. So there you can see the classic posy starting to happen. And yes, you could do it with 7 roses, because there's your centre one there. But I've got 10, so another one goes in, tucking it underneath, and another one goes in, and another one. And that is a classic rose posy with 10 roses. You could keep going and adding, and you could have 20. Some of these beautiful posies have 30 or 40 roses in them, and like this. You can vary the roses. But I'm just going to show you a variation on that, which just lifts it a wee bit. So, apart we go. Start with the middle one. Once again, spiral that one. Now I've got some statice. Statice is dried, and I've picked white because white goes so beautifully with these deep velvet roses. Gypsophila, gorgeous with it. Caspia, all sorts of these lovely fine little roses. So I've tucked that one in before I go under again. Now I'll take another piece of gypsophila, another piece of statice. Status, in I go. Round I go. It's giving a contrast of form which immediately makes the posy more interesting. If you were doing this for a wedding that somebody's sprung on you, this might be a variation for the bride that the bridesmaids don't get, or of course vice versa. And then round it goes. You notice I've got everything prepared first. I've got all the roses, all of the statice cut already, because you don't want to, when you've got everything, all these sort of things in your hand, you don't suddenly wanting to be having to cut something off. You end up losing your teeth, or everything falls apart as you go. Now you'll also notice that by adding the second element to it, it's bulked up the posy itself. The posy is actually now got much bigger, and this is what florists use these things for often. When roses are extremely expensive, like Valentine's Day, you can make a posy look so much more sumptuous by adding another element to it, and of course it's also reducing the cost a little bit of them all. Alright, when you've got that posy done like this, if you're not happy with a piece of it at this point, move things around. It's only loosely being held in your hand after all. And to tie it off. Now to tie it off I'm using raffia. Raffia is wonderful because as it gets wet it actually gets stronger. You loop it over. So we need 4 hands. Around I go. Then I put those 2 ends through the loop and pull it tight. Okay, I've pulled it tight. Now I'm going to separate one from the other. One is going around that way, one stays where it is, and I tie the knot. Alright, and that holds your posy in place. You can have a wee sort of, do I like that? See that little piece there is annoying me, so I chop that piece off. And there it is, ready to be tied. Now this bit seems very, very cruel, but you hold it like this. So that sounds, but be gentle with it. And now tie it much, much tighter, because now you've got 2 hands to really tie that in tight with a knot, and it's done. Cut off the edges. Now heaps of people who want posies that aren't brides and things are quite happy with it looking like that. Most florists would tell you that is just not acceptable. So at this point you close down to there. A posy would be a hand, and that's where you cut them all off, including that leaf. Now, depending on how simple your posy is, you can have all sorts of elaborate handles for these, which you'll see in other DVDs. It's not the point of this DVD to show you how to do your handles and things, but that there is your very, very basic little rose posy. Now, a wee trick with this rosy posy is a little vase filled with water and pop it inside, and you've immediately got yourself a lovely little European arrangement. And this is happening more and more in floral design. Create it in your hand, tie it off, put it in a vase, and you just have a lovely design that's never ever been intended, of course, to be held by a bride. This is why I've put the white in too. The white of the statice goes with the white of the vase, and it unifies it all. So there it is. We now have a beautiful, pretty little gift, and I'm going to give this to our new neighbours who've just moved in next door. Right, this design is all about a table setting using roses, but this time we're adding lots of other things. So first of all, I'm going to show you the mechanics and foam. Floral foam is what we're using. In America, Australia and New Zealand, and perhaps also in England, this is very commonly called Oasis. The reason is the very first company that brought it out was called Oasis, but since then floral foam is made all over the world in all different countries. So we call it floral foam, but that's just to let you know, if somebody says to you, do you need some Oasis? And you go, what's that? That's what it is, this stuff here. It comes in green, which is for using with fresh flowers, and it comes in a browny grey colour for using with dried flowers. So we're using fresh flowers, we've done using this one. Now the block of foam I have put in a sink of water. You fill the sink with water, you float it on top and leave it. Don't poke at it, leave it. When it is completely sunk to the bottom of the sink and it has turned this green, dark green colour, you know it is absolutely full of water and becomes very heavy. So this design is going to be a table arrangement, and I've selected the small vase. The reason is it's actually going to go on this table, and I want the design to reach from there to there, allowing room for a person to sit there and here. Okay, so that's why I'm only wanting it about this long. If I'd used the bigger container, I would have had to go out further, and the table just isn't big enough for it, hence the change there. But once again, you can do exactly the same thing in the big container. Alright, so the floral foam is going to go into here, and as you can see, I'm going to have to cut it down ever so slightly to size, and I want it so it is above the rim about that much. So my first cut is going to be straight down here, and that goes back onto the dish. That means it's going to be that high. And then I have to work out what I have to cut off so it will go inside that container, and I make a mark there. Cut off the end. Now it should slip beautifully inside there, and it's in and it's above there. The next thing you do, you don't want those square edges, so you cut them off all the way around. And then use your hand to round everything off. The reason you do this is because if you don't, you're quite tempted to end up with a square design. The shape of the foam does influence your placements. So there it is, all squared off, ready to go. You can see it's a bit shaky in there, so this is where we use this florist tape. Now florist tape also can be called para tape. It is papery on one side and very, very, very sticky on the other. A little bit on that side, over the top, down to that side, and cut it off. Very sticky. And it's just stabilised it. You can also do a piece across that way.
Could you also cut a shim out of the piece that you took out there and just wedge it in?
Yes, you can. Absolutely, totally. Here's a shim. You see, that's male talk. A shim, I think, means a piece, a little piece, a wedge. So there it is. So I could have popped that down there as well. Okay? Sorted. So we'll get those all out of the way. And I've now got to go into the garden and pick some of my own foliage. Wow, it's hot out there. It must be 30 degrees. Whew, nice to be back inside, I can tell you. Okay, in the garden I have picked conifer, a lovely flat conifer. Rosemary from the rosemary hedge, always useful for food and for floristry. Coprosma, this is a New Zealand native and it's shiny. And Ming fern. Now the reason I've picked these four particular ones is they're what I call busy, and this arrangement's going to be quite an English traditional arrangement, and we always start by putting the foliage in first. That's called basing it. On top of the foliage we then add the colour, the flowers, which are the chrysanthemums, the hypericum berries, the alstroemeria, and of course the 10 roses. So to start off, the design itself is going to be long and narrow. So we're going to define those parameters with the first placements. You notice I've cut the floral foam so it's above the rim. This is to allow the stems to go in. We're not going to push the stems right in. If you push the stems right in, it's not going to allow for lots of other stems from all the other sides. And we're going to start basing with the conifer. This means it's going to go right on the bottom. Now obviously something like that there would look dreadful. So we're just going to trim it down so it becomes a long, narrow piece of foliage. All these lovely nuts on there. Summer in New Zealand. Once again, cut on an angle, and in it goes. And it goes at the bottom there, coming downwards. I'm only going in a little way, and coming downwards, so the arrangement is going down to touch the table. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing with the same length on the other side. Cutting off these little lengths that I don't want. Cutting it on an angle, and in it goes. Now can you now see that I've put the conifer, one on that side of the tape and this diagonally on the other side of the tape. And this is the secret. Everything I do on this side, I'm going to repeat on this side. So it's the tape is effectively divided into 4 sections, the floral foam. If I put something in this corner, I will put it on that corner, all the way around. This is a traditional design, as I said, therefore this is how you do it, so you get beautiful balance. Now the smaller bits of conifer I'm going to cut off here. See, I've only actually picked 2 pieces. You don't need to pick more. Once you've planned a design, you just don't need to pick heaps and heaps of anything. Leave it to grow for next time. Okay, so here it is. Once again, these gorgeous little pieces on there. So I'm going to put one on that side. And I found another one that's also got those pieces on. And that's going on this side. You notice that these ones are much narrower. These ones are longer because I want my design to be narrower. Now this is now defined the length. I'm going to only have my design coming out to here. I'm possibly going to have it a wee bit longer on the ends of it. I'm going to put a wee bit more conifer in. Use anything. What I call these busy material. By that I mean it's not modern bold shapes. It's very fussy shapes that we're using, and this is always excellent for the basing. Whatever I do on one side, I do it diagonally opposite on the other side, keeping those ones short. It's a bit long, we give it a haircut. Conifer grows almost anywhere in the world. Any sort of conifer will do. This is a particularly flat one. Alright, that's what we'd call layer 1. Now we're going to put our second piece of tizzy material in, and we'd call that layer 2, but we're actually not going to, trying not to layer it too much, we're trying to interweave it. I'm going to use the rosemary. Take a wee bit of the bottom of the rosemary, if only we had smell-o-vision. Cut it on an angle. And this time I'm turning it that way and putting it on that side of the tape, because we're going to work now the rosemary from that side to that side. Same length. On an angle. And this way. So it looks as if it's actually travelling through the floral foam and out the other way. Keeping it low in the floral foam. Plenty of part material going in here, so we've got to have it fairly low. Why do I cut it each time? You cut it each time because it's just freshening the cut so that it can really soak up that floral foam. The smell is absolutely gorgeous. And some shorter pieces. Facing inwards just there. And there. And the next is the Coprosma. Picked pink because it's shiny, which is giving a contrast of form on there. And I'm going to put the Coprosma. Haven't got a lot of Coprosma in my garden, so I'm going to put the Coprosma on this side. What I'm doing there, I have to do in the other quarter. Oh, that rosemary is amazing. It's loving it. There it is, okay? What's doing on that side gets done on that side. A little bit higher. I have got a bucket down there. I'm not really throwing them on the floor. Entire. Okay, now I'm going to cut the Coprosma in half here to there, so I can put a little bit on this side and opposite on that side to there. Cut this one in half and do the same thing. You notice I'm always working on an angle. This is called a radiating design, which means it's radiating from one point, which is right in the middle. If you imagine that as the point, everything is radiating from that point, and that's how you do your placements in a traditional English style design. Okay, our last bit of tiz is the Ming Fern. I've picked this one because it's got the lime green colour, which is going to work beautifully with the lime green colour of the chrysanthemum, even though it's a different form. And once again, in it goes. I'm going to cut shorter pieces and put it on this side. One goes there. And one goes there. Building, building, building. And think about if there's too much of it, just chop some of the pieces off, because Ming Fern, lots of things, they can get just a little bit too hairy, I suppose, fussy, and it can become just a little bit annoying. And in it goes. And you notice I'm this time putting it underneath the Coprosma. This is just to give it a continuation from the side. It doesn't want to roll off. But without the layers being quite so definite. So we're getting that feeling for it now. Now we want to have this round piece going to the top, so I'm going to add some more of that Ming Fern through the top here. That way, no, still as if it's growing out from that middle. So we're sloping it that way and putting another piece in to meet it over the top there. Can you see what we're doing there? Yes. Right, now I'm going to select my 10 roses, and I'm going to put one in simply to mark how high I want it to go. Now you can see the problem is that the tape is right in the centre there, and therefore to get a flower through there is going to be annoying. So I'm going to pierce it, because I definitely want to have a rose in the middle of there. And this will be my height, and I'm going, how high do I want it to be? Whatever height I decide for this one is going to be the height of my entire arrangement. And I'm saying I want my arrangement to be that high only, so people can see over the top of it. Now by having it that height, you can see it possibly needs to be just a little bit longer. Alright, now traditionally what you do is always you put 3 roses into this part here. They're cut fairly short, facing, one goes that way and then another one's going that way. Whatever you do on one side, always do on the other side. And they're always the biggest ones. Short stem roses would work very well in this arrangement, you can see because of that. So cut them too short. There it is going in there. Look at those beautiful cool colours. Place these ones first. About that. And weave the stem in through so that it's coming out from underneath all that foliage. Same way the other side, weaving it through the foliage. So it's there. Right, now that you can see I've done as a line through there, which is not good. You need to give it depth. To give it depth, you've also got to work both sides. So that's 5 of my roses gone, so I'm going to put 6, 7. So I'm going to put another one here and another one there. My width is there. Number 6. Number 7. And then I'm going to go 8 and 9. Now you can see we're starting to get that depth. It's no longer just one-dimensional, two-dimensional. And I've got a 10th one. And the 10th rows I'm going to say, oh, we're going to put it because people are going to count. So I'm just going to pop it underneath the central one, and I'm going to tuck it in quite a long way down. And I'm picking quite a small one. And I'm tucking it in quite a long way down in there. And there's my 10 roses. Now we fill it in. You can see I've got the lime green coming from here, so I'm going to add lime green, but we'll start with the Alstroemerias. Pick the Alstroemerias because they're the same shade as the roses, but a different form. The other good thing about Alstroemerias is that when you pick them, you can just cut one off and pop it in. And you're still doing the same thing. Whatever you put on this side, you put on the other side. So I've put one there, so I'm going to pop one in there. Put another one in here. Got very soft stems, these ones. Obviously growing very fast in summer. So hold them right down low in the stem to get them into the foam. So I've got 2 on one side and then 2 and pushing it right down into the foam. We've got these lovely buds left. Buds are good, but they're a bit clumsy, so let's cut all these pieces off it. And pop it in here. So building all the time as I go through. Second Alstroemeria. And this time I'm going to put it here. It's following now the same line as those roses that were giving the width. So we're building this quite dramatic design at the moment. Okay, so now you can see the line of the Alstroemerias. They're going from this side across to this side, plus are reinforcing the line of the rose along the top there. Now I'm going to put the chrysanthemums in, and they're going to go from this side across to that side. In they go. Can you see how immediately it's reinforcing the colour of the foxtail, oh not the foxtail, sorry, of the Ming fern, but it's a different form, so it's more interesting. What's very cool about a design like this, if you want to, you can take this rose out and put a candle there, all sorts of wonderful things. When you've got this method in your head, in your repertoire, I suppose would be better than head, you can actually use it for all sorts of fabulous combinations and things. Some in, some out, and there you can see it. So it's going from this side across to that side. Right, so the last little texture that we're going to put in is these beautiful Hypericum berries. They come green this time of the year in New Zealand, but they also, you can get them reds and yellows and all sorts of gorgeous colours. I'm going to tuck these way down in like this, so that you're getting the depth. It's covering up the floral foam, and once again it's accentuating the line going across this way of that lime green. Lime green is the most wonderful colour to have in your repertoire because it will bring out all the other colours so beautifully. Red, this dark red that we're playing with here, is a very much a recessive colour, which means it goes into the background. So if you put lime green with it, it brings it back up into life. Filling in the gaps now, checking no floral foam can be seen anywhere. Pushing those right back in there to give the design depth as we go around. Checking it now for balance. Is everything balanced? Are there any big gaps in it that we need? I can probably see a wee bit of a gap here and here on this side, and I'm going, need just a little bit of something there. Can't use roses, I've got my 10 roses, so I might see if I can use a longer stem of Alstroemeria. Cut right down a bit. And this is what you're going to do with your designs too. Obviously your designs are not ever going to be exactly the same as anybody else's. You have to start to evaluate it with the design elements and principles and say, is it working? Has it got a lovely working flow on it? Right, the floral foam is there and I want it there, so we cut it a little bit shorter. And in we go. Right, a little bit shorter still. And that's filled up that gap that side. I've now got a flow down there, and I need to do the same on that side. And there it is. Now I have a little trick. A design like this is with so many flowers in it is going to use an awful lot of water. The water in the floral foam is going to have to be replenished, especially in the heat that we're having like today, 30 degrees Celsius. So we have a wee tip for you, and for it I have to go to the fridge. Here it is. It's ice cubes. A tip from designers in New Zealand they've been using for years. It's fantastic in exhibition work. All you need to do is put an ice cube deep down inside the arrangement so it's sitting on the floral foam and it's hidden, and one on the other side, deep down, down, down. Now what happens is that ice cube, as it melts, is going to replenish the floral foam, but it's just keeping it moist all day. It's all you have to do that. Do that every day, and your roses, who do really prefer not being in floral foam are going to last 4 or 5 days. So there it is, an ice cube trick. I'm now going to set the table so you can see how this is going to look in all its glory, and it's going to take me a minute to clean up, and I'll show you what we've done. This design is inspired by the trip I took to the flower market to get the roses. On the way home, we stopped to have a picnic under a tree, and it was a gum tree. And the gum tree was shedding its bark, and I just looked at that bark, and as you do when you're a floral designer, I just thought, that is just the most beautiful bark lying on the ground. And I could see the man with the motor mower about to just chop it all up in his motor mower. The Hamilton Gardens are enormous, and so they have lots of tractors all the time mowing the grass. And I went, they won't mind me just quietly picking these up from around the gum tree to use in your design. So always on the lookout. Also, we're over there, the Gleditsia tree was just starting to form its pods. These pods are used a lot in Russia because they're such stunning things, and as they dry, they twist into these hard shapes, and you can hear those seeds inside. So it's a lovely shape to have. This one is too soft to use yet. It's going to probably be another month or two when we're into autumn before it will completely have dried on the tree and curled. So Gleditsia trees, you could use the seed pods, gum bark. For this design, anything that's interesting that you've got in your environment that normally perhaps would be thrown away, that is bark type, driftwood type, wood type persuasion. Going to go back to the bigger vase this time because the gum I picked up was rather long, and if I'd used the little container it would have been out of scale. So I've used this container so that as I build up the stacked design, it's in proportion with that white container. So the first thing we have to do, of course, is put in the floral foam. Because it's a bigger container, I don't have to cut anything this time. I just put it straight in, and it just sits there. The design is a stacked design, which means it's going to be running across the foam this way, but that is still out of proportion to the container. I'm going to put the bark here. You can see that it's not going to be high enough. So I have to add a second level, a second tier of floral foam to give it heaps of height. And therefore it brings me for another technique for you, and it's the skewer. These are called bamboo skewers, used for kebabs and all those sort of things. Now you put them on an angle, so it's going straight down that way, and then you put another one on an angle, so it's going straight down the other way. Angle it, 2 of them across from each other, very much going to stay there. The only problem we now have, of course, is it wobbling back and forward. So you can do, as was suggested earlier by a mind superior to mine, you can use a shim, new word of the day, to wedge in front and back. And this is where little spare wedges of floral foam are handy, because you can just pop them in, wedge them in, and makes a rather lovely back on there. Okay, with this sort of design, it's often used to be seen only from the front. And this is an advantage here with only having 10 roses. So the back of it is normally quite plain, and it is totally designed for going against a wall. If you want to make it go all round, whatever we do on the front, you've also got to do on the back. So when we attach the bark here, you would also have to attach the bark there. okay? But we're actually going to do it simply with this is the front, that is the back, and off we go. You're going to need mossing pins. A mossing pin is a U-shaped piece of wire. If you don't have a mossing pin, you can make it yourself with heavy gauge wire, and it works just as well, and it's possibly cheaper. You buy mossing pins by the 1,000. You'll notice that that one is particularly brown. It's because I reuse them. The rustier they get, the more they have a hold into the floral foam. When they're brand new, of course, they're all shiny wire, but now they've got a bit of rust on them, they're actually even better. So if you take apart a design, save your mossing pins. So as a modern stack design, the first thing we do is attach whatever you've decided is going to be your horizontal. There's the mossing pin, and I'm pushing it through the bark, so it goes right through, and then attach it as a nice horizontal there. And that's incredibly firm. The key is, of course, to make sure that it is horizontal and not up one side or down the other. I'm going to do that right the way along here. If the plant material that you've got is actually too hard to get through, just drill it with a little tiny drill for the mossing pin to go through. I'm just putting it on a hard surface and pushing it through like that, and push it in. Now I have to work from the front because I actually can't see if they're straight or not. So, excuse my back. And you see the wonderful play on textures it gives you when you put it in. You want some that are out, some that are in, and obviously a few that are just below the level of the vase there. Look how it curls as it dries. It's amazing. Grey on one side, that beautiful honey colour on the other side. Leaving gaps on purpose. And up we go right to the top there. Alright, so that's your beginning of your stacking. Now we have to create the illusion, of course, that it's going to have depth at the back here. So we're going to do the same thing at the back. Find a pointy piece and just pop it in. And I've got it on that side, so something has to emerge this side. So there it is, poke it in. So you're creating this effect that it's moved right through from one side to the other. If you need to, cut pieces in half. Look at the texture on that there, isn't it gorgeous? In one side. And what did it do? I'm needing a short piece. Don't really want to cut it. It's sometimes easy just to break it so it looks as if it's just come off the tree that way. And the other side. Okay, keep checking that they're horizontal as they're going across that way. Breaking it now because that's as wide as I want this to go, because the space I'm putting it in isn't that much wider. So there, here. As I said, break it rather than cut it. You're wanting it to look as natural as possible. Now I'm going to put some pieces running right the way along the top. Pushing hard down into there. Right, and now putting just a few right into the back there, so we get this lovely effect of depth. And that's as much bark as I collected, so that's as much bark as I can use. Australian gum is incredibly versatile. And obligingly sheds its bark all the time. Very good of it, really.
And branches.
Yes, and the branches. They call it, sometimes they call it the widow maker because the branches just collapse, and if somebody's underneath them and it's a guy, the woman's instantly a instantly a widow. Okay, now if you've got the Gleditsia seed pods, and if they dry they do last, can you see how by adding them in it's going to do another piece of texture there? These ones are too floppy. There, so that would give you that lovely texture. Now that you've done that, all you do is fill in the gaps. And you fill in the gaps with your roses and all of these lovely plant material we've got to create it. But as you're filling in the gaps, always keep them in a line so that you have this beautiful horizontal form. Now I'm going to do this from the front because it's much, much easier to see, obviously. And all we're going to do is group in patterns as we go. We'll start with the roses. Can you see why you don't buy long stem roses if you're going to do a design like this? It's very important to know what you're going to do before you start, so that you've got the plant material you need and you're not wasting your money. So in it goes. See, I slightly pointed it in that direction. I'm cutting them very, very short and quite in close. Aren't they beautiful roses? They're like velvet. 3, and then in it goes. Creating the line. 1. Shorter the stems on these roses, the longer they will last because they're not having to take so long to pick up the water. I'm just going to pop one in the back here. So when you're looking at this from the top, it's forming a trail that way. And it's placed deep inside, still on that, but down in here. See how it's leading your eye back through there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 2 to go. Add depth by popping them so that they're just poking out. So you're being encouraged to look through. How many has that given me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's your 10 roses placed. Now you're adding, now that you've got them in your rose, now you add the other things. Now the Hypericum. Cutting short as well. Pushing it right down in. Following the line through here. You can see when you're following rows formed by nature, overlap them. So I didn't stop that right there. I carried it on a little bit, and that visually connects that row with that row. Now I'm going to do the same because I've got a bit of green there, so I want a little bit of green down in here. Just connecting things up visually as you go, and I'm going to take that green around the corner. So you're now looking through it into more green on that side. Remember, everything is 3D, so I've got this line coming down through here, so I'm going to carry it along the top here. So when you're looking at the top of this, it's coming along and down, always creating eye trails, I suppose they are. Eye trails. And whereas everything in the other design that we've just done for the table, everything was radiating from one point, in this case it isn't. In this case it's radiating from lots of points because we're keeping it very, very horizontal. Right, we're going to have a change of form, something that will really bring the colours of those roses out more, and back to these lovely lime green chrysanthemums. We're going to put them along this line. Cut them really, really short, and in they go. These have got lovely stiff little stems, which allows you to get them into the floral foam, even when it's not particularly accessible. And that's taking your eye round the corner on that part. Now we've got the chrysanthemums there, so we're going to repeat them over on this side. And of course this is also covering up the floral foam that's on the top. Isn't it a wonderful colour scheme? Lime green and red. Fabulous, if I say so myself. A little bunch of them up the top here, hiding the foam. Now just like the trick that we showed you before, I'm leaving a little gap up the top here so I can put an ice cube in there, and so that this will keep turgid. A lot of ice is going to be required because that is a lot of floral foam, but I'm also put water into the vase so that will keep on sucking it up. So we have the Hypericum coming through here, and I'm going to finish with just a little bit coming out of there. And seeing how far out I can get it, Hypericum's got tiny, tiny little stems. So I'll see if we can find some nice long ones. Now, just to enclose the back, because we can't really have floral foam showing on the back, I'm going to go back to this fern, Ming fern, that isn't a fern I suspect at all, and I'm simply going to place this all over the back. Now you're not going to see it, but it's the professional thing to do. You don't leave sort of a great hunk of floral foam anywhere. You dress the back just like, I suppose, you put a petticoat on in the old days. You never saw it, but if you didn't have it, you could see like through it, just like Lady Di found out. So dressing the back just for a professional finish. Right, so there's the back all dressed. No floral foam showing. And there it is. A stack designing using gum with horizontal and a deck of roses. Do make it. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Just gorgeous. Buttonhole is a really lovely thing to give to somebody to make them feel special, and it doesn't just have to be a wedding. Now, a buttonhole is a very small arrangement. If you're adding lots of flowers, as I've got here, and you've used them all, it would actually be a shoulder spray. A buttonhole normally only has one main flower and lots of tiny little flowers in it. So I've got my roses here. Now remember, the key is you want them to be small. This one here is really getting a bit floppy in the heat, and you need one that's strong and turgid because it's going to be out of water for the rest of its life. So I'm going to pick this one, but it's too big to be a buttonhole. So you just quietly take off the outside couple of leaves, and wow, it makes it smaller. And that is going to be the main little flower of the buttonhole. Now look at that. So immediately you've got like a rose bud there. Now to wire a rose, to wire any of these things, you need the finest gauge wire that you can find. Hold the leaves up like this, not leaves of course, and then push the wire from one side right through to the other. You now bring them both down like this and hold them there. Now with the longer piece of wire, I'm going to go round 1, 2 and 3 and bring it down beside the other one. And it's done. This is the part you're not going to like. You then cut the stem there. And the rose now has a wire stem. And that's all you need. Any more than that, and you're going to have far too bulky a piece when you put them all together. So that is your wired rose. Tiny. For the, aren't they? Oh, if only you could smell. For the ivy leaves, we're going to put 3 ivy leaves, 1, 2, and a third one down here. So we're going to wire the back of them. The reason we wire them is so that you can manipulate them better once you've done them. So once again, the finest gauge wire you can get, and you take a wee nip in the vein. Put the wire through, hold it with your thumb there so it doesn't rip as you're going down like this to the end of the stem. Take 1, 2, 3, and down it goes. And you cut off the one that you wound round plus the stem, leaving you with the ivy on the wire. And all you can see on the back is that tiny, tiny little stitch. I need 3 of them, and I've picked 3 that are similar shape and similar size from off my ivy. And there it is. There's the 3 ivies done. Now we're going to use 2 chrysanthemums, these little button chrysanthemums. For the button chrysanthemums, just like the rose, through one side and out the other. Bend it down. And 1, 2, 3 and down. And the one you wound round, the wire you wound round plus the stem, cut it off, and there you have your little chrysanthemum wired. And 2 of those. For the hypericum, I've selected a very, very strong stem on it, and all I'm going to do is put a loop over that middle one and down through like that. Then I'm going to put my finger on it, just like I've been doing before, and go around 1, 2, 3 and pull it down, and then cut off the loop and that one, and there I have got a nice wide hypericum. Now the reason you wire them is so that when you put them together it makes a tiny little bunch. If we were using hypericum plus the 2 of those plus the rose, can you see how huge this lot of stems are? And it's too bulky. So by wiring them you are totally getting rid of the bulk. Now the other thing you need to do is tape them. The reason we tape is it keeps the moisture in. This rose now has no way of getting any water, and in this sort of summer heat it will completely and utterly exhaust itself very, very quickly. So by using this tape, which is forest tape, it seals the end for it to retain as much moisture as it can. Of course, it also, by having had your rose in the water for 24 hours, it has conditioned it. So we start the tape at the top. The tape must be warm, and you're stretching the tape as you go round down the wire. And the tape sticks to itself, so all you need to do to get to the bottom is pull it off, and it is taped. And you can see up here it's completely sealed that off. The warmer the tape, it's easier it's going to be for you to stretch it. So if you're doing this in the middle of winter, I strongly suggest you put it in your hot water cupboard or somewhere like that first before you start to warm that tape up. I'm making it look easy, that's because it's a very, very warm day here. Okay, and off it goes. The tape also hides the wire, and once again makes it more professional. The tape sticks to itself, as I said, so that it means that all I'm doing when I start is just squishing it to itself and then rolling, pulling as I roll. Pull. The less tape you use, the better the roll's going to be, right to the bottom and off. So do that with all of them. They will be much happier. So now we've taped them all, we're ready to start. You start by putting your 3 ivies, one on top of the other, like this. And then you tape them together. If you were doing a shoulder spray, you would do this exactly the same thing, but you'd be using 5 bits of ivy and they'd probably be bigger. Now because they're wired, you can now move them into position. You put 1 at the base, 2 at the base, and 1 at the top. And that is the backing for your buttonhole. It's created a hole in the middle there. That is where you're going to put your other pieces. So through that hole first of all goes the Hypericum. So it's laying at the top. Remember, this is for very, very small little buttonhole. And did you see how I could push it? Because it's wired, I can push it into position anywhere I want it. Then onto the other side, I'm putting the 2 little crescents. Probably could have done 1, but I've got 2 there. Push them to that side, going through that hole. And now that's laid the foundation for the piece de resistance, which is of course your rose. And in it goes. Okay, now this is when you can maneuver, play, push one down, push the other one down, get rid of one. I want the rose coming out a little bit. And down, and there it is, a buttonhole for a man, or as a thank you for something for a wedding. Now to finish off the back of it, is I'm squishing. If you feel I can actually, I'm squishing that tape together, but you just tape it again. Round you go, pulling as you go. Pull it off. And use your strong scissors to cut it off there. And there you have a simple little buttonhole to present to somebody as a thank you, and use a pin, pearl-headed pin to go with it, and you can fiddle with that for ages to get yourself your buttonhole.